As far as my knowledge goes, no democracy in any other country has come about without some kind of violence, in some cases very violent. In Bhutan's case, our fourth king, His Majesty King Jigme Singye Wangchuck, felt that it's time for democracy.
Bhutan, das Bergland im Himalaya, liegt zwischen den Großmächten China und Indien. Seine 700.000 Einwohner leben vor allem von der Viehwirtschaft und vom Landbau. Das spirituelle Leben ist vom Buddhismus bestimmt. Bis vor wenigen Jahren war Bhutan eine absolute Monarchie. 2008 hat das Volk zum ersten Mal ein Zweikammerparlament gewählt. Eine behutsame Demokratisierung wurde eingeleitet. Wie entsteht Mitbestimmung in einem Land, in dem der König noch fast unbeschränkten Einfluss hat? Dem Besucher aus der Schweiz schildern Politikerinnen, Verwaltungsangestellte und Bürger, wie sie die Herausforderungen des Übergangs von der absoluten Monarchie zur Demokratie in Bhutan erleben und mitgestalten. (2003) hatte König Jigme Singye Wangchuck die Ausarbeitung einer neuen Verfassung veranlasst. 2007 wurde erstmals ein Oberhaus mit 25 Mitgliedern gewählt und 2008 kam das Unterhaus mit 47 Mitgliedern dazu. Das Oberhaus entspricht dem Schweizerischen Ständerat, das Unterhaus dem Nationalrat.
Now, democracy in Bhutan has just now been ushered in, but not to say that this came all at once in a big surprise package is definitely no. Because over the years, even as we were under monarchy, a lot of process has taken place right from as back as mid-1980s, when there was this big move for decentralization and decentralization of powers and authorities to the local government. So all these processes have taken root since then, and then slowly power from the throne has been devolved slowly to the local government, to the executive. The full parliamentary democracy in 2008, where you have to have this full-fledged nationwide election, was definitely new to Bhutan.
In 2008, Druk Phensum Sokpa had a landslide victory, and they formed the government. And then our party, People's Democratic Party, had only just 2 members in the parliament. But in 2013 elections, in these July elections, the fortunes, if I may say so, has changed, and the opposition party, which is People's Democratic Party, has formed a government. Why that would happen is because people probably wanted change, and it is also a sign that any government should not take their citizens or electorate for granted. And if my party right now, if you don't do a good job within the next 5 years, we will face the same music later. I mean, we may not even win. Most important challenges that my constituency, for example, faces is getting in touch with the electorate. It is very difficult. So if we have a radio network through which we can disseminate information on legislative procedures, on legislations, on plans and policies, on development issues, get to the people through radio network, that would be really nice.
Well, from my very inner reflection of how much I've been exposed and how much I've experienced democracy, is that democracy as a principle is a wonderful, it's a wonderful concept and a wonderful mechanism for governance. But in practice, it requires the very right environment, and people who are participating also need to have really proper understanding of what democracy means. And I also believe that it does require a lot of education, a lot of exposure, and a lot of thinking beyond self. Unless you have that kind of people participating, this democracy is going to be not easy. It's definitely not an easy journey.
Prior to the democratic constitutional monarchy was established in 2008, we had just a unicameral system, the National Assembly of Bhutan. So altogether, there were 150 people representing this unicameral system up to 2007. After the 2008 elections, the parliament consists of His Majesty the King, the upper house, the National Council, which consists of 25 members. Coming to the lower house, the National Assembly comprises of 47 members who are directly elected by the people from the 47 constituencies in the kingdom. There are 4 other constitutional bodies which provide oversight functions. These are namely the Anti-Corruption Commission, the Royal Audit Authority, the Election Commission, and the Royal Civil Service Commission. Constitutional bodies have been established to provide a check and balance to the government.
So the Anti-Corruption Commission was established in 2005 under Royal Decree. So we started operation in early 2006, January 2006. And it has primarily three functions, and these are public advocacy and education. Second is prevention, basically looking at the systems where there are opportunities for minimizing opportunities for corruption. And the third, which actually is short-term strategy, which is the investigation. We have right now 72 people. Of 72, 50% they are professionals, the rest are support staff. This investigative mandate, of course, I think it is necessary. Definitely in a small society it's very challenging, especially when everybody knows everybody. It's a very cohesive society, so it becomes very difficult. So that's why one of the biggest challenges that we face in building such an organization is getting good people and retaining them. And given this very sensitive mandate of investigation, that parents definitely would not like to make the ACC the first choice of their children's employment. So that's why we have a heavy turnover of staff. And over the last 8 years, we've done quite a lot of work, whether it's to do with prevention, public education, or investigation. Over 100 cases we've investigated, and our conviction rate is also very high, 96% or so.
The heterogeneity of the composition of Bhutanese society has not been its weakness, but its strength. And therefore, as I mentioned in the beginning, the nature of representation, particularly in the National Council, although administrative by its outlook, is actually a representation of ethno-linguistic lines as well. Therefore, the basis of allocating resources, you need mediation of your elected representatives.
I personally think that for democracy to work in any country, I think it has to first work at the local levels, local government levels. And in Bhutan, we have been very lucky to have visionary kings. Our fourth king has actually started decentralization, giving power to the people since the early 80s. That is when the power was devolved to the Dzongkhaks, that's the district, and in the 90s the power was given to this block development. So, and the decentralization has been a slow and planned process. It wasn't just it didn't just come. But now, with after the first general election in 2008, decentralization is a very serious concern. It's a serious for any government.
I am the GUP of Lunigyo under Dzongkhak. Back in 2011, I stood as a candidate for Lunigeo constituency. There's a block, and I got elected and my term is for 5 years. Yeah. According to the constitution of Bhutan, any local government head cannot be affiliated with parties, which means as a head of the local government, we are more or less apolitical.
My electorate actually has so many expectations. Besides legislative functions, I think their main interest is actually in the development, bringing road access closer to them, road access to every geok, if possible to every village. And we think this is quite a challenge, but not impossible.
I come from a constituency which is fairly remote relatively, where road access was an issue for a long time. And even before joining politics, when I was serving in the royal government of Bhutan, my only desire was that we have to somehow ensure that there is road accessibility to my constituency, because along with road, so many other developments follow. I have made all the effort to try to synchronize what I pledged and what people desire to serve them in this coming 5-year plan. So that is how I keep connected to the people.
I believe engagement of the local people has greatly enhanced accountability. However, there's a certain dimension to it which still needs to be addressed, and that is the financial autonomy or financial independence of local government. While at the implementation level, the degree of authority given to the local government has certainly increased. Similar increase in the financial authority has not happened as of yet. And therefore, while people are questioning the local leaders on accountability, people also must understand that the local leaders, while are fully empowered to implement the plan, they do not have the financial power to really decide what the people want.
Democracy is all about accountability. And if a party which has been elected is not able to fulfill the pledges it made, then obviously the electors, the people, will have to change the government. And I guess without it, then there is the essence of democracy is lost. In the end, we all want to do what is best for the country, whichever party they are. It's only that they have different ways of doing it. But one thing that in the democratic process that I find rather unsettling is that parties can go on making all kinds of pledges just so that they can win the hearts of the people. Pledges which cannot sustainably be fulfilled once government is formed. There is a little bit of a difficulty in that process in the democratic setup. I'm sure it is there all over the world, but we are a young democracy. We are learning now the difficulties in this, and I hope we will be able to bring about better processes as we go along.
We were talking about social accountability, and here what we've been also stressing here is that citizens should not matter only for the elections and during the elections and forgotten after the elections. And when you talk about democracy, it's basically a mechanism to really ensure justice, to ensure equal opportunity, to ensure prosperity for all. No, that there's equity, and I think this is so important. When you talk about corruption, these bureaucratic corruptions, I think they can somehow be handled. No, but perhaps the bigger form of corruption, which will emerge in future, and which we need to be proactive in addressing these larger forms of corruption, is the electoral corruption, political corruption. You know, for example, when you talk about political corruption or electoral corruption, political financing. No, is a huge issue everywhere, even in your country. No, not only in developing countries like Bhutan, but even in America, even in Europe, developed countries. It's a very important issue. The code of conduct of the parliamentarians, the candidates, the political parties. These are the larger issues that we need to address and put in place the mechanisms to minimize such opportunities. And again, once again, educating the citizens. So it's very important that the government that comes to power, that they invest resources in building this capacity. How can they responsibly partake in the governance? And they must, and without fear. No, that they should not fear of any retribution, because at the end of the day, the resources, whatever the governance system is meant for the people. And social accountability, it doesn't necessarily mean using tools to demand accountability, but also building the capacity of the citizens in deciding on their budget. Where are they going to use this? Where are they going to allocate the funds? You know, and also tracking expenditure. You know, how is the money being used?
So good governance, I cannot emphasize enough that it is one of the most important aspects of a nation.
I'm Sring Somo, a teacher of this school. I am also the Democracy Club coordinator. Democracy Club, in fact, is a newly introduced club in Bhutan. And in fact, my school was lucky enough to receive the approval from the Chief Election Commissioner, Tashukinzang, the Election Commissioner of Bhutan, along with a few of the schools across the nation. The very objective of the introduction of Democracy Club in my school was basically to inform the children on the gradual transition of democracy in Bhutan, to provide them with the civic education on the electoral process, educate them on the voter education, which I felt this year was very important because the nation was undergoing the 2013 NA election, which is quite different from the 2008 election.
I have chosen to be the member of Democracy Club because this club is not for the well-being of oneself, but for the well-being of all. Like this club educates the people and people on the democratic process and to take the right decision. So I chose this club.
My name is Pima Singchuki and I'm studying in the 7th grade, section C, and I'm also a student of Khangku Middle Secondary School. Like my friends from Bida, I've also joined this club to know more about the democratic system in our country, since I have very little knowledge on this, and also the politics also, it's very puzzling, that it's a complicated case. So I thought that by joining the Democracy Club I might be able to fulfill my desire to know about democracy, the political system. Even some of my elders have been complaining that democracy is again a chaotic system, and but for some, democratic system is helping them. So it is very fun on us experiencing how the people have their views and ideas.
From this club, the most important thing or the most important impact to our children and to the society. Here, the children played a very vital role. These children, they act like a bridge between the Election Commission of Bhutan and to the public. They disseminated the information about the electoral process of Bhutan to their parents. And this club act as a mini election commission. Whatever we try to do, we do in a very democratic way only. Even electing the captains in the school. So these are some of the activities our children used to do in the school in a democratic way.
The democratic process itself is very new in our country, and that must be probably the reason why we have less number of women parliamentarians. And one reason would be like we have no role models till this year, and this year we are having a lady minister, and then now she will serve as a role model for all the women in our country. I feel very happy and privileged to be the member of parliament. I feel fortunate to be one of four. We have 4 of us in the parliament.
In Bhutan, women traditionally has played a very important role all along. If you see in many parts of Bhutan, women inherit property, and thus women do make a lot of important decisions in the area of their properties and other important matters in family lives. But you will see that there is some disparity between men and women when it comes to public affairs. Now, in the earlier days, in 1960s, when education first started in Bhutan, modern education, so our education was really across the border, mostly in India. So what happened under that situation is that many men took part in education, because families felt more comfortable to send boys out for education and kept the girls at home. So I would imagine that it started from there. So men got educated before women did. If you compare Bhutan with many countries in the region, we are proud and we like to claim that there has been no direct and very explicit discrimination whatsoever. Since we started our development in Bhutan, all the policies, all the rules and regulations, anything that governed the development was really fair to both men and women. And now, if you look at our public affairs, and especially if you look at people at the executive level, you will see that it is mostly men and very few women. And I think we also need to look at responsive policies that are responsive to the needs. So unless you have that, then that disparity will be created. And Bhutan is very much aware of all this, and government has recognized this, and so many initiatives are being taken.
We have 205 local governments, and out of that 205, we have 1 lady representative. And then to encourage more ladies to participate in 2016 local elections, the committee, Women and Children Committee, is trying to come up with awareness programs, and then we wanted to give orientation for the women to easily participate in the local elections.
In our democracy club, we have no boys, but there are 18 members who are all girls. I think boys don't have much interest in what's happening around them, because I think that from my viewpoint, boys are a little bit backward in what we girls know about the goings on in the country and everything, the changes happening in our environment. Like, they're only concerned about what's going on in their own world.
My name is Tenzin Tinle. Last year, I took part from Dukjirong Sokpa and represented Bumdang, Chokurtang, Geok as Geok constituency. Initially, I was really not motivated to join politics, but the day I resigned from army, having served in the army for last 14 years, I want to help as many youth as possible. Initially, I started with Sungki Dindur in Bhutanese, that is singing competition in whole Bhutan, in which I employed 45 youths. In our country now, the chunk of the population is youth, maybe around 60 to 65%. The population is youth, and moreover, thousands and thousands of youth are unemployed today, sir. And unemployment is one of the major problems our nation is facing at the moment. So I represented and took part in political parties, thinking that by chance or with luck, if I could win, I could double the number and help as many youth as possible.
I represent Dukjirong Sokpa, and Dukjirong Sokpa means Bhutan Social Democratic Party. We believe in the ideology of social democracy, which upholds the principles of equality, social justice, and solidarity. Unfortunately, in 2013 elections, my party did not perform very well because of a number of factors. I think the biggest challenge for us was the time factor, and we barely had 2 weeks to campaign throughout the country. So in 2 weeks, I think the voters and the Bhutanese population did not understand our party's objectives and our philosophy better. Secondly, as a party that was dominated by a lot of young people, I think there were a lot of concerns whether young people are capable of leading this country. And because in the past, I think most of our leaders come from the older generation. There seems to be a lack of confidence in our young people, and I think that factor also worked against us. Also in our party, we had the highest number of female candidates. We had 15 female candidates as compared to 3 or 4 in other political parties. And the fact that we had larger number of female candidates also, I think, made a lot of people concerned, and whether women are, whether women can be effective leaders.
I have been joining politics because there are so many areas where I thought that I should be helping the people in my own way, along with the government people, so the people back at home, they get benefited, to bring the developmental activities, because in my district I see that it is one of the least developed district. So because of that, like there had been around 5 parties in Bhutan, and looking at all the people, the participants from different parties, I found that I'm also equally more capable than them. So I thought, why not take a chance and prove my capability. Went for camping and I did a good job, and I thought Chirwang would be the best place for me because I personally feel that I'm a mature lady.
If you want to address the youth problem, we need to tackle the root cause by just providing them with employment, by just providing them with some incentives. Today, I think, is not going to solve the problem. We need to have policies, long-term, short-term policies to address those youth-related problems. And if we address that, a large number of social problems that we have in our, especially in the capital today, would get addressed, such as robbery, crime, rape, prostitution. I think it's all interconnected. The root causes is, number one, I think it's got to do a lot with our education sector. At the moment, we have an education system that does not encourage analytical and creative thinking. So we have a lot of young people graduating from colleges, And after graduation, everybody is expected to find a job in the government or find a job in the private sector. So we do not have diversity of talents. And I think we can very effectively, create an environment or create an education system which encourages more diversity. Not everybody should be expected to graduate from a regular college. We need to create a lot of opportunities for people who are either interested in music, in arts, in other creative field, in writing, so that right from very young age, different people are groomed in different professional field depending on their talent, depending on their capacity, and depending on their interests.
For me, 25 is not so young, but still some of the people in Bhutan, they think that 25 is a very young age. But in a case like if we don't marry at 25, then some people say that 25, you have grown so old, but you didn't marry as of now. And being in politics at 25, they say everything is young. But I personally feel 25 is not young. So I think everybody is capable and they can do well if they are given a chance.